Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today I'm going to be painting Radukar's elite units from Warhammer Quest Cursed City. That is the Vyrkos Blood-born vampires and the Kosargi Nightguard. And as you can see here, we are starting with the vampires. You get 3 vampires in the set, they are all unique sculpts, but I will only be painting this one on camera. And as you can see, I have started by priming the miniatures with matte white Army Painter spray. Once that primer is dry, I'm going to apply Shining Silver from Army Painter over all of the metal areas. I'm using Shining Silver here because it is a slightly brighter colour than Lead Belcher, which is what I normally use. I actually think that I do prefer Lead Belcher to the Shining Silver as a metallic base for putting speed paints over the top of, so I do go back to Lead Belcher later on when I do the Kosargi. But for now, this Shining Silver is being applied to the swords, that's the blades and the hilts. And also the vampires have pauldrons, they have small metal detailing on their armour, so that'll get some metallic coat as well. I'm then using the Crusader Skin from the Army Painter Speedpaints range, and I'm going to apply this over all of the exposed skin on the miniatures, and I'm going to pull this paint as thin as possible over the miniature because these are vampires, they are supposed to be pale skinned, so I don't want a really deep rich skin colour, I want it to be very pale with a lot of the white showing through. With that done, I'm going to switch to hardened leather and I'm going to apply this to the clothing and also to the pauldron. After painting this first miniature, I decided that I would rather have the vampires wearing black, so for the remaining 2 miniatures I used black on the clothing and on the pauldrons instead, which I thought looked a little better, it looked a little bit more sinister and dark. Next I went to Grim Black and I applied this to the hair. On the other 2 miniatures that I was painting, this was also the point where I painted the pauldron and the clothing. And I do think this Grim Black looks really nice over the matte white. I used it straight out of the bottle on the bats from the Cursed City board game, and I thought they looked pretty decent without any further effort. It was literally just a case of applying the black and leaving it. Next I'm switching to dark wood and I'm going to apply this to any of the fur on the miniature, and I'm also going to apply it to the hilts of the swords. This was actually the most difficult part for me to get right, and I think that's partly down to the fact there's a lack of deep detailing on these vampire miniatures. They are very smooth and delicate without a lot of deep lines for the paint to work with. Regardless, I then moved on to Gravelord Grey and I applied this to any stones or pillars on the scenic bases, and I also applied it to the sword blades. I do think Gravelord Grey looks very nice straight over matte white. And it does take a lot of the pain out of painting scenic miniatures, which isn't the most interesting thing for me to be doing. Next up I'm using some Orc Skin, and I'm just going to apply this to the vine on the scenic base. I have done these in brown on some of the other miniatures, but I do quite like this pop of vibrant green on some of the miniatures just to brighten them up. I'm then using some matte white. This isn't a speed paint, but I'm going to dot in the eyes on the miniature, and this is to put down a base of white for a final step we're going to take, which is dotting in the eyes with blood red. Because blood red is a translucent speed paint, what will happen is it will pull away from the white underneath, and you should get like a little glimmer of white in the center of your red eyes. And that's the vampires done. I will show you a finished job at the end of the video, but we are moving straight on to the Kosargi Nightguard. Again, I have primed these with matte white Army Painter spray. And this particular example has a little rat on the base, which I have removed because it makes painting the miniature a bit easier. And this time we're going to apply Lead Belcher to all of the metallics. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I am preferring Lead Belcher to Shining Silver. I think it's a much nicer, darker metallic look, which works really well with these undead enemies. So this is going to go over the blade of the halberd, it's going to go on the helmet, it's also going to go on the belt buckle and any buttons. And now we get to the point in the video where I cheat completely, because I have done lots of experimentation with the speed paints I have in my collection, and I could not get a good zombie flesh tone. I have a really nice recipe that I use for zombie flesh tones using Citadel shades, and I couldn't get anything even close to half as good using speed paints, so we are reverting to an old tried and trusted formula here. We are going to use Citadel shades, starting with Reichland Flesh Shade. And this is really simple, but it gets nice results. You start with the white base, and then you apply the Reichland Flesh Shade over all of the skin areas. So on this miniature, that's the face and the hands, and any bits of skin showing through the torn clothing. I then switch to Seraphim Sepia and I apply that to the skin as well, but I don't apply it over the whole skin, I apply it in blotchy patches. The idea is to get a mottled texture in the skin. Finally, I switch to Aegean Camo shade and I do the same thing again, just blotching in little areas of the green to look like rot and decay. And when the washes are dry, you should get a nice mottled, decaying skin tone, which I think looks really good. Next, we need to paint underneath this miniature. Fortunately, I had not glued it onto a base, so this becomes much easier. I'm going to use Gravelord Grey, and I'm just going to flip the miniature upside down and paint the trouser legs. Then I'm switching to hardened leather and I'm going to apply this to the belt and the belt buckle. As I've said in my other speed paint videos, I think the hardened leather looks really good over white. You do get a really nice leather effect, and it also looks good over the lead belcher. I'm going to apply it to the keys that the Kosargi is holding. I'm also going to apply it to the pauldrons and the handle of the halberd. Next, I'm switching to dark wood and I'm going to paint the trench coat with this. I am going for a very dark, muted palette with these Kosargis. I wanted lots of browns and greys and blacks. I wanted them to look dingy and dirty, and like foot troops that had been in many battles. So next is grim black, and this is for the boots. I'm then using Gravelord Grey on the beard, and I'm also going to apply this on the cuffs of the jacket and also on the blade of the halberd and on the helmet. And then I'm moving on to Holy White, and of course that goes on all of the fur trim on the jacket and on the helmet. Holy White continues to impress me every time I use it. I think it looks really good. And once I'm done with that Holy White, it's just a matter of basing up. And as with all of my other Cursed City miniatures, that just involves stolen mud texture paint, and then a coloured rim on the base depending on whether it is a villain, a named villain, a hero, or whatever. And here we have one of the finished Vyrkos Blood-born vampires. This is one of the ones with black armour. I do prefer that to the leather armour I painted on the first one, but overall I'm not really happy with the vampires. I just found them a bit too much of a struggle to get really good finishes on, possibly because there wasn't a lot of deep recesses for the speed paints to work with and get really good clean edges. However, I am very happy with how the Kosargi Nightguard turned out, which is good because they're some of my favourite miniatures from the set. But that's it, all of Radukar's elite units, his vampires and his Kosargi Nightguard painted up and ready to enter the Cursed City. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.